folks. My name is Mo Amir, and this is VANCOLOUR, British Columbia's bona fide culture and politics TV talk show right here on Check and Check Plus. We're also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Tonight, is the Easter Bunny kind of creepy? Well, we have a BC cabinet minister who thinks that the Easter Bunny is not only underappreciated, but in fact, better than Santa Claus. Wild, I know. We're also going to talk about how and why folks get involved in politics and the barriers to political participation with Vancouver City Councillor Christine Boyle. But first, public bathrooms in Metro Vancouver, Victoria, Kelowna, and Nanaimo are not great. In fact, public bathrooms are not great in North America generally, but if you've traveled to Europe, Japan, and other places, they actually are pretty good. So why? Why is North America so bad at public bathrooms in urban centers? Our first guest today will help us understand. A video journalist, he produces short films that help educate folks on urban planning challenges for cities across the country. Find his YouTube channel, About Here, and check out his CBC series, Stories About Here, on CBC Gem. He is Uytae Lee. Uytae, nice to see you.
It is wonderful to see you, Mo Amir. And gosh, it's such an honor to get the Mo Amir intro treatment. Like, I don't know how, man, you just knock it out of the park.
You earned it. You deserve it. I love your work, and I'm so happy to see you. Let's just get to it, though.
Absolutely.
Why do bathrooms in North America suck? Why are they so terrible?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I will preface this a little bit by saying I have learned that it is a very complex question to answer, but my take on it is I kind of boil it down into two main reasons. The first one is really that there are a lot of concerns associated with what could happen to a public bathroom once it's provided. Stuff that gets frequently cited is sexual activities, drug use, vandalism. Incidents like that happen, and that really puts local governments on edge a little bit when providing amenities like a public bathroom. But that's just one part of the equation for me. I think the other part of it that really rings true just across North America is that I think governments have essentially offloaded the responsibility of providing bathrooms for the public to the private sector here. If you look at, for example, Vancouver's health bylaw, there are requirements for gas stations to have bathrooms available for the customers. There are requirements for restaurants and cafes, of course. And what that has created is a de facto network of bathrooms and private businesses that you and I can access relatively easily if we, pay for a coffee or a donut or ask really, really nicely.
Sure.
But the, impact of that is that it's essentially let the government off the hook in providing any good public ones.
Right. And when we say that bathrooms are terrible, I think it's one of those things that once you realize you can't unsee it, because pre-pandemic, my last overseas trip was to Japan, and I was marveled by their public bathroom facilities. Not only are they clean and pristine and they look nice on the outside, but there's so many of them. And when you walk through Vancouver or other cities in North America, certainly in BC as well, you realize, oh wow, we have none of these.
Yeah, that's so cool that you went to Japan and actually saw some of these bathrooms. I like they treat, it's just a different way of treating them culturally.
Right.
But to answer your question, why that sort of difference? Again, many reasons, but I think a big part of it I could attribute to cities in Japan or like Europe, let's say London or Paris. They simply have a much longer history of providing bathrooms for the public.
Oh, interesting.
Here in North America, I just think, for many, many reasons, we've sort of accepted that bathrooms are a private responsibility, right? To some extent, we're a commuting culture, right? A lot of folks in Vancouver, Metro Vancouver, we commute from our homes to our work and then right back. This idea of a public bathroom being necessary along that trip is not as evident. But I think increasingly as cities in North America urbanize and kind of emphasize this sort of more urban living where people are walking and cycling everywhere, it's going to be much more evident that it is somewhat hypocritical to advocate for those sorts of, cities while not providing usable public bathrooms.
Right. And one of the things with public bathrooms in North American cities is they don't even get cleaned that often, maybe just once or twice a day.
Yeah.
But then when you look at a restaurant bathroom, it gets cleaned like 10 times a day, right?
You bring up like a really good point, because we have a really good example of that right here in Vancouver. I don't get into this in the video, but we have 2 comfort stations in this city, one at Victory Square Park and one at the intersection of Main and Hastings. So this is like heart of downtown East Side.
Right.
But these comfort stations, they're bathrooms that are cleaned and maintained very frequently. There are people employed to staff them, at all hours of operation.
Right.
And they are usable. I can go in and use them. There's nothing wrong with them.
So Seattle tried this where they had an automated or automatically cleaning bathroom facility, a few of them, but it didn't work. They ended up selling those things on eBay. Why didn't that work? Why can't we have a bathroom that just cleans itself?
Man. I mean, we're bringing Seattle story into, it's, that's like truly the worst case scenario. And I think a lot of cities point to Seattle story as like, this is why we just can't do anything about it. So you mentioned these are automated, self-cleaning public toilets, which I think, in theory, it sounds like it could be like a technological solution to the maintenance and the cleaning of these bathrooms. But I think at the end of the day, you really need human presence at these bathrooms to make them usable. Because for someone who's determined to use and abuse a bathroom, just a simple robot, flushing the floors with water every now and then after a visit, just not going to cut it.
I want to wrap it up on this note. Why is this an important issue? Why do we need more public bathrooms in our cities?
It's easy for someone like you and me to say, hey, like this is annoying, right? Like I wish I didn't have to pay for a coffee or a donut to use a public bathroom in this city. I think that's, certainly an issue, but what really makes this matter for me a lot, or why I really decided to make a video about it, is I truly see it having a disproportionately severe impact on certain groups of people, a lot of them living at the margins. Of course, there are certain users who need to use bathrooms frequently, like children, seniors, pregnant women, and these groups, really the lack of public bathrooms ends up being a huge barrier to them, being able to leave their homes. But of course, I think one of the most impacted groups by this issue is the unhoused. If you are experiencing homelessness, you do not have the financial means to pay every time you want to use a bathroom. In many cases, a business might not even, might refuse you service just because, of the way you look.
Right.
So in those situations, if there aren't public bathrooms available, there's simply no option than the streets. To me, that is tragic and a really unjust system that we've created for some of the most marginalized people in our society. But, there's another angle to this that, if the humanity part doesn't appeal to your audience, I think, to some extent, this is also a real public health issue. There have been many documented cases where human feces on the ground has led to outbreaks of hepatitis A.
Oh, wow.
There is a particularly bad one that happened in San Diego a few years ago, where an outbreak led to 25 people actually dying. So,
wow.
For me, like, why should you care? Like this issue really ranges from kind of a bit of an inconvenience for many to ultimately like a pretty big health risk for all of us.
Well, Uytae, I appreciate your work. I appreciate your video on this subject. I think it's one of those things, like I said, once you see it, you can't unsee it. So I think it's really important. Your videos are great. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Folks, that was video journalist Uytae Lee. Find his YouTube channel About Here and find his new CBC series Stories About Here on CBC Gem to learn more about the often overlooked urban issues right in your backyard that affect your day-to-day life. Now, after some business, we're going to find out what drives people to participate in politics and why politics, even in British Columbia, is in need of demystifying. An elected official in the city of Vancouver, City Councillor Christine Boyle, is up next. I'm Mo Amir. This is VANCOLOUR.